I've always had a fascination with snow. As a child, I'd press my nose against the cold glass, watching the winter wonderland unfold. That was before the storm that changed everything. In the small town where I lived, nestled between the arms of the mountains, the first snow was an event, a white blanket to hush the world. The weather forecasts predicted a heavy snowfall, but nothing out of the ordinary. We were prepared, or so we thought. The snow began as a delicate cascade, gentle and mesmerizing. But as dusk crept over the horizon, the snowflakes grew larger and angrier. A wind picked up, howling through the trees like the whispers of long-forgotten spirits. By nightfall, the world outside had vanished, consumed by the voracious blizzard. The following morning, I awoke to a silence profound and absolute. The snow had stopped, but an unnatural cold seeped through the walls, a cold that seemed to crawl under my skin and grip my bones. Peering out, I saw the aftermath, a pristine, untouched landscape of snow, and not a soul in sight. Days passed. The power lines had succumbed to the storm, and with them, our connection to the outside world. The town was isolated, a frozen island adrift in a sea of white. It started with Mr. Thompson from the grocery store. His house, on the edge of town, was empty, the door ajar, letting in the icy breath of winter. No tracks, no signs of struggle, nothing. It was as if he'd been plucked from existence. A search party was formed, a band of us trudging through the snow, calling his name into the silence. We found nothing. That night, I lay awake, listening to the creaking of the house, the groaning of the trees, and a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. The whispers grew more insistent, a susurrus of voices that seemed to emanate from the snow itself. I ventured out, alone, following the siren call of those ethereal murmurs. There, in the heart of the white desert, I saw them. Figures, ethereal and shimmering, dancing in a circle. Their movements were graceful, yet filled with an unspeakable melancholy. They beckoned me closer, their hands outstretched. I felt a pull, a desire to join their spectral ballet, to shed the burden of the flesh and become one with the frost. But a voice inside me resisted, a primal scream of survival that jolted me back to reality. I stumbled back to the warmth of my home, the whispers fading with each step. I knew then that the storm was no ordinary act of nature. It was alive, sentient, and malevolent. As the days blurred into a continuous loop of twilight and darkness, more people vanished. The town, once vibrant and full of life, became a ghost town, with only a few of us left to bear witness to the creeping dread. I found an old diary in the attic, bound in leather and dust. It spoke of a similar storm centuries ago, one that brought with it beings of ice and sorrow, the Frostborn. They sought warmth, the diary claimed, the warmth of human souls. I wouldn't let the Frostborn claim any more lives. The diary hinted at a ritual, a way to appease the storm and send the Frostborn back to their frozen slumber. I gathered what was needed, fire, ash, and iron. In the eye of the storm, I drew the symbols, recited the ancient words, and offered a piece of my own warmth to the Frostborn. The wind screamed, the figures writhed, and the world turned a blinding white. I felt the cold seep into my very marrow, felt the Frostborn clawing at the edges of my soul. The storm calmed, the figures dissipated, and the whispers died. But the cold remained a permanent chill in my heart, a reminder of the price paid. The survivors emerged, haggard and hollow-eyed. We never spoke of the Frostborn, but the memory lingered, a shadow on our collective conscience. Now, every snowfall brings a shiver of fear. I watch the dance of the flakes, listen for the whispers, and pray that the Frostborn remains just a story. But deep down, I know the truth, and I wait, vigilant for the next storm, the next dance of the Frostborn. They predicted the snowstorm would be the worst in decades, a white beast from the north. As the town's weathered meteorologist, I had seen my share of storms, but the data for this one sent a shiver down my spine. The air pressure was dropping rapidly, too rapidly, and the cold. It was unnatural. I was broadcasting live when the first flakes began to fall, gentle and unassuming against the studio window. "Stay inside," I warned my listeners. "This one's different." I could feel it in my bones, a primal warning that this was no ordinary blizzard. By nightfall, the town was smothered in a growing layer of snow. The winds screamed like banshees, heralding the arrival of something sinister. Power lines succumbed, plunging my home into darkness. By candlelight, I watched the world disappear into a swirling void of white. The next morning, the silence was deafening. The storm had paused, the town held its breath, and in the eerie calm, I ventured out. My footprints were the only blemish on the endless white canvas, until I saw another set, impossibly large, leading to the woods. As the sky dimmed once again, a voice emerged from the static of my battery-operated radio. It wasn't mine, nor from any station I knew. It spoke in a soft whisper, promising warmth and safety to those who would follow it into the storm. Reports came in, fragmented over the radio waves. People were following the voice, walking into the blizzard, leaving doors ajar, fires burning, and families behind. A part of me wanted to chase after them, to pull them back from whatever madness called them. I saw it then from my frosted window, a figure tall and dark against the snow, standing in the street. I blinked, and it was closer, its features obscured by the falling snow. I knew it wasn't human, not anymore. That night, the whispers crept into my home, slithering under doors and through keyholes. "Join us," they beckoned. "Embrace the cold." The candle flames flickered in response, casting shadows that danced too lively for mere firelight. Days and nights melded together, marked only by the relentless assault of snow and wind. Food was running low, and the whispers grew bolder, now joined by a haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the very snow itself. Objects began to move on their own, animated by an unseen force. Pictures fell from walls, doors slammed shut, and outside the figure watched, waiting. I could feel its gaze, even through walls, a pressure on my mind that threatened to crack it open. I ventured outside, compelled by a force I couldn't resist. The town was unrecognizable, houses buried, streets erased. The figure led me to the edge of the woods, where the snow formed a gaping maw. There, the figure spoke, its voice a chorus of the missing. "We are the cold," it said, "and you are alone. Join us, or perish." I stood at the precipice, the warmth of my breath stolen by the icy air. I refused. With the last shred of my will, I turned back to the ghostly town. The figure's scream was the blizzard's howl, and the storm resumed with renewed fury. Days turned to weeks. I broadcasted to no one, my voice lost in the storm. The figure stood sentinel outside, a constant reminder of the choice I had made. Now, the whispers are my only company, the figure my only neighbor. I speak these words not knowing if they'll ever be heard. The snowstorm has become my world, a world of unyielding cold and relentless whispers. In the secluded town of Frost Hollow, winters were harsh and unforgiving. As the first whispers of an approaching snowstorm began, the townspeople battened down, expecting to be snowed in for days. However, this storm was different, promising a cold none had ever endured. The snow started as a gentle ballet of flakes, but soon escalated into a frenzied dance of winter's wrath. By nightfall, Frost Hollow was engulfed in a blizzard that blotted out the stars and threatened to bury the town's secrets under layers of ice. The morning after the storm's arrival brought a bone-chilling silence and the first in a series of unexplainable disappearances. Old Mr. Jenkins, the lighthouse keeper, was the first to vanish, his door found wide open, his heart cold. Search parties found only confusion. Footprints led into the blinding white, stopping abruptly as though the missing had been plucked from the earth. And each morning, another empty home, another cold hearth. Those who ventured out spoke of whispers carried on the wind, voices that promised warmth and comfort, leading them away from safety. Most returned, shaken and frostbitten, but some were lured by the siren call into the white abyss. As the storm raged on, the day turned indistinguishable from night. The townsfolk's fear metamorphosed into paranoia. Trust eroded like the ice on their windows, revealing the stark terror in their eyes. Children huddled by fireplaces, whispering tales of the snow walkers, ethereal beings born from the heart of the blizzard, their icy fingers reaching for the souls of the living. On the storm's seventh night, the howling winds carried more than frozen fury. Shadows flickered in the snow's glare, forms both human and not, circling the town as if waiting for something or someone. Elderly Mrs. Whitfield, a descendant of Frost Hollow's founders, declared that the storm was alive, hungry for an offering. In times long past, her ancestors had appeased the winter's hunger to ensure the town's survival. A reluctant consensus was reached. A ritual, ancient and forgotten, was to be performed. The townsfolk gathered, casting heirlooms and tokens of memory into a fire that struggled against the howling winds. The ritual demanded more. It required a living warmth to quell the cold. Eyes turned to the stranger among them, a drifter who had sought shelter as the storm began. As the townspeople encircled the drifter, the snow parted to reveal the snow walkers, their forms shimmering with a ghostly light. The drifter, resigned to his fate, stepped into their midst. With the drifter's disappearance, a hush fell over Frost Hollow. The blizzard receded as quickly as it had come, leaving a crystal-clear sky and a town shrouded in silence. Frost Hollow never spoke of the storm or the sacrifices made. The missing were remembered as victims of nature's cruelty, not of the town's. Yet, as the winters roll in, the children of Frost Hollow still listen for the whispers in the white, and the elders keep watch for the snow walkers, knowing the blizzard's hunger may one day return. It was supposed to be a simple drive. Just a few hours through the mountain pass to get home before Thanksgiving. The weather report showed a clear evening, so when the first flakes of snow began to fall, no one was concerned. But as dusk turned to night, the flakes grew thicker, the winds harsher, and soon a full-blown snowstorm was upon us. The car's heater fought against the cold as we crawled along the barely visible road. The snowfall became a white curtain, the world outside disappearing into a blur. Then, with a jolt that sent our hearts to our throats, the car skidded and came to a halt, trapped in a snowbank. With no cell service and the storm raging, we had no choice but to seek shelter. Through the howling wind, we saw a faint light in the distance. It was an old cabin, its windows glowing with a welcoming warmth. We trudged through the snow, relief flooding us as we approached. The cabin was empty, a fire burning in the hearth as if waiting for us. We called out, but no answer came. Figuring the owner might return soon, we decided to wait, warming our frozen limbs by the fire. As the night progressed, strange sounds began to pierce the blizzard's roar. Taps on the windows, thuds on the roof, and a feeling like we were not alone. It was as if the storm itself was alive, whispering secrets in a language we couldn't understand. One by one, members of our group began to disappear. First, it was just a quick step outside to retrieve something from the car, but they never returned. Then someone would go to another room, and when we followed, they were gone. In search of our friends, we found an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. It told of a family who had once lived here, lost to a blizzard just like this one. They had perished one by one, taken by the storm. The blizzard grew fiercer, the cabin groaning under the weight of the snow. The fire flickered and died, and with it, the last bit of comfort vanished. The cold wasn't just around us. It was inside us, a creeping dread that numbed our souls. By morning, I was the only one left. The cabin was a tomb, a monument to those claimed by the storm. I could hear the whispers now, clear as day, calling me to join the voices outside. I don't remember being found, but I woke up in a hospital bed, the only survivor of the snowstorm. They said I was delirious, talking of the voices in the blizzard. The cabin, they said, had been abandoned for decades, nothing left but ruins. Now, every time the snow falls, I hear the whispers again and feel the chill of unseen presences. The storm never really ended. It just became a part of me, a reminder that some horrors are as relentless as the winter's cold.